Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video today we're going to be drafting out a notch collar jacket for ladies. If you're new to my channel, you're welcome. In this channel I share sewing tutorials and pattern drafting every week. Don't forget to subscribe. So to get started, we're going to be needing the front and back basic bodice, as you can see here, and this is the basic sleeve, so we're going to be needing it as well. So what I've done here is that I've drew out my front basic bodice, as you can see it here. So we are going to be enlarging this pattern in order to create the jacket pattern. So to get started, we're going to be starting from the neck. So I used 3 by 3 inches. You can see this is the neck width. I used 3 inches for it, and this is the neck depth. I used 3 inches. This is my upper chest line, the bust line, the waistline, and the hip line, and I've created the waist dart. So we are going to be altering this pattern, and I'll be starting from the neck depth. So to the neck depth, we are going to be adding 2.5 inch, 0.25 inch to it, like this. And then the neck width, we're going to be adding 0.25 to it as well. So that is the first step. Then I'm just going to create the new neckline for the jacket, just like this. Now that we are done with the neck, then we move to the shoulder slope. So at the shoulder slope, you're going to mark 0.25 up, just like I'm doing now. So you mark it like this, and then at this shoulder tip, you're going to mark the same 0.25 like this, and then you're going to extend the shoulder slope by 0.25. So on this mark, I'll just mark 0.25. Then I will connect it. So I'm just going to extend this neckline to join it with this marked new mark, and then I will just connect this to the shoulder, to the new mark at the shoulder tip, just here, just like that. Then now that we are done with the shoulder slope, we move to the armhole. So we need to extend the armhole as well. So at the under the arm here, you will need to go down by 1/2 inch, and then we are going to connect this new shoulder tip to our new under the arm. So I'll just use this to do that. Just like it. So once you are done with this, we're going to be adding ease allowance to this pattern. So this pattern, this is my actual measurement. With this pattern is without a sewing allowance. So we're going to be adding ease allowance, and then we're going to be adding seam allowance. So I will first of all add the ease allowance, which is 1/2 inch. So you will just mark 1/2 inch like this, 1/2 inch to the waistline and to the hip line. Then we need to connect all these points together. So this is the ease allowance, not the seam allowance. So now that we are done with this, the next thing is to create the collar stand and then the lapel for the jacket. To do that, the first thing you need to do is to create the collar stand. And to create the collar stand, so from this new neckline, we are going to mark 1 inch. So you mark 1 inch like this, and then we're going to be marking the neck depth. So the neck depth for the jacket is usually 2 inches above the bust line. So I'm just going to mark 2 inches above the bust line, and that will be here. Then I will connect that to this and this to this point. So we are going to extend this shoulder line, and then we connect that to the neck depth. Just like this. So the next thing we want to do is to create the break point. So the break point will depend on the diameter of the button you want to use. So the basic is 1 inch. So I'm just going to mark 1 inch at the hip line, 1 inch at the hip line. Then I will go up by 2 inches at the waistline, and from that 2 inches you will mark 1 inch. So once you've marked this 1 inch, I will connect this, square up a line from the hip line to this new point, and then from here to this point. So this is the break point, and this is where you will start placing your button. So from here down. Now that we are done with this, the next thing we want to do is to create the lapel. And to create the lapel is very, very simple. All you need to do is just to mark 2 inches from the center front. You know, this is the center front line. So at the new neckline now, you're going to mark 2 inches. And this also depends on how big you want your lapel to be. But this is just the basic. So I'll just mark 2 inches. Then once you mark the 2 inches, then you draw a straight line like this, and then you connect this to the break point. So I'll just use this curved edge of the ruler to do that. And this is the lapel. So I will just label this as 2 inches. So we mark 2 inches from here to here, and for the break point we use 1 inch, 1 inch here, 1 inch here. And remember that we mark 1 inch here as well in order to create the collar stand. So we mark 1 inch here, 2 inch here, 1 inch here, and 1 inch here. So this is how the front will look like. So now that we've created this, if you are using a waist dart, so this will be okay. But if you want to use a princess dart, you will need to create the princess dart. So to create the princess dart, just find the middle point of your armhole depth, which is around here, and then you're going to connect that to the bust point. And then we are done with the front. So before we continue with the collar, and before we add the seam allowance to this pattern, we're going to be drafting out the back, because we're going to be needing the back neckline to create the collar stand. So to create the back pattern for the jacket, we're going to be using the basic back block, so which I've traced out here as you can see it. And for the neck, for the basic pattern, we use 1 inch down for the neck depth and 3 inches for the neck width. So as we've done for the front, we're going to be doing the same thing for the back. So we're going to be enlarging this pattern to create our jacket pattern. So just like we did for the front, we're going to be measuring 0.25 inch down here. You will do the same at the neck width. So this is 0.25. So, and then I will create the new neckline. Just like this. Now that we've created the new neckline, then we're going to go up again at this point. We go up by 0.25. We're going to do the same at the shoulder tip, 0.25, and then from this new 0.25 you are going to add 0.25 again. So we are enlarging the pattern. Then we connect. Let's connect all these points together. Like that. So now that you have done this, then you move to the under the arm around here. We're going to mark 1/2 inch down. Then we create a new armhole cuff. So if you are following this step, this is exactly what you're going to have. And from this point, we're going to add ease allowance to this pattern. And remember that we are yet to add our seam allowance. This is just my basic measurement. So I'm just going to add 1/2 inch here. You add it to the waist and to your hip line. Then we connect all these points. So this is how the back will look like. Then we're going to create our princess dart again. So you find the middle point. So you find the middle point, and that will be here in my own case. Then we're just going to connect this to the bust line. So using this ruler, I'm just going to connect this. So you connect this point to the bust line. So this is how the back pattern will look like, and this is what you're going to be cutting out. So we are going to add the seam allowance around this pattern, but before we do that, I'm just going to create a kind of curved shape to this center back in order for the jacket to relax well at the center, at my center back. If your back is a little bit curved, so you can do it this way, but this is optional. So you just mark 1/2 inch from your waistline, and then you mark that up towards the upper chest line. Like that, and then you mark it down to the hip line. So this is optional, but if your back is not curved, all you need to do is just to cut your center back, this green mark. So you just cut on this green mark. But if your back is a little bit curved, go in by 1/2 inch, just like I've done here, and then you connect that 1/2 inch to your upper chest line. So you just blend it with this center back here, and then you connect it back to the hip line. So now that we've done this, we're going to be adding seam allowance to this pattern. So we're going to add 1/2 inch round. Then at the hip line, which is the M line, I'll be adding 1 inch. So 1 inch to the hip line. So this will be our M line allowance, and that is 1 inch. And to the other part of the pattern, we are going to be adding 1/2 inch to it. So I will just mark 1/2 inch round. So just like this, and at this edge of the hip line, I'm just going to create a kind of curved, just like this, in order to give it a nice shape. And then we're going to be cutting this out. So for the back pattern now, we are going to be cutting out 2 pieces because of this curved shape. But if you are not adding this to your own pattern, all you need to do is to cut just one piece for the back pattern. So I will label this as the back pattern. Then I will cut it out. So now that we've created the back pattern for the jacket, we want to create the collar. So to create the collar, we are going to be working on this front pattern, and then we're going to be measuring the neckline of the back in order to create the collar. So the first thing you want to do now on this front pattern is to cross out this 1-inch collar stand that we use to create the depth for the jacket. So I'm just going to cross out this line so that we don't get confused. So you cross out this line. We don't have anything to do again with this 1 inch. So now we are going to be working directly on this neckline here. So once you've crossed out this 1 inch, you will need to mark your neckline for the back, and then you're going to mark it round just like I'm doing now. So you place your tape measure on it like this, and remember that we've added seam allowance to this back pattern, so you're not going to measure the seam allowance. So we're just going to measure from here. This is our center back to this point. So that is what you will need to measure. So I will just measure from there to here, and I have 4 inches. As you can see it here, so this is 4 inches. So I will set this aside. So from the front neckline, I will first of all mark 0.25 like this, and from that 0.25 I'm going to mark the 4 inches back neckline. So just mark it up. Then you will need to add like 1.1 inch to it, just like this. Then we are going to you connect this to this point, and then we're going to blend it to the neckline. So I will just blend it to the neckline. Just like this. So you blend it to the neckline. So from this new mark, we are going to mark 2 3/4 inches. That is 2.75 inches. So you will just mark that 2.75 inches. Then you are going to square a line and connect these points together. And also this depends on how big you want your collar to be, but this is just the basic for this pattern. So now that you've done this, then you come to your lapel, which is here. So on your lapel, you're going to mark 1/4 inch, that is 0.75 inch. You will mark it here, and then from this point that you just marked, you will need to mark that same 1/4 inch again, 3/4 inch. So that will be here, this point, and then we are now going to connect this point to our center front, which is here. So measuring the 1/4 inch from here to here and from here to here is just the guide. So you will need to connect this point to your center front, just like I'm doing it, just like this. So once you've done this, the next thing we want to do is you connect this point to this point, and you make sure that this new line is parallel to this collar line. So I'll be using this curved ruler to do that. So just like this. So once you've done this, the next thing we want to do now is to create a kind of curve to this line in order for it to be parallel to the back neckline. As you can see, the back neckline is curved and this line is straight. So we need to create a kind of curve in order for the collar to be parallel to the back neckline. So to create that, you will need to mark 1/2 inch here. So you mark 1/2 inch, you connect that. So the next thing we want to do now is to connect this mark to this neckline. So we're just going to blend it to this line. So just like this. So this is how the collar will look like, and by doing it this way and following this step, you're going to have a collar that will fit perfectly to your pattern. So we're going to be tracing this out on another paper. So I'll place this paper underneath. Then I'm just going to use my tracing wheel to trace it out. So this is the collar, and we're going to be cutting it on fold, and we will cut the main fabric and a facing for the collar. So I'll set this aside so that we can finish up with the front. So now that we are done with the pattern, the next thing we want to do now is to add our seam allowance round the pattern. Just like we've done for the back, we're going to be adding 1 inch to the hem line, and then we're going to be adding 1/2 inch around the pattern. But if you want to add more, you can add more seam allowance to your pattern. We want to create a sleeve that will match with this pattern. Now we want to create the sleeve for the jacket, and we are creating this sleeve in order for us to have a sleeve that will fit into the armhole of the jacket. So this is the basic sleeve block. As you can see here, I've just traced it out, and I trace it out without adding the seam allowance. So I will just set this aside. So this is how your basic sleeve without the seam allowance will look like. So once you've traced out your basic sleeve, all you need to do now is just to enlarge this pattern as well, because we've enlarged, if you remember that we enlarged the armhole curve, we enlarged the shoulder tip. So we need to do the same thing for the sleeve pattern in order for it to fit perfectly to the armhole. So at the bicep line, we are going to be adding 1/2 inch at both sides, like this. And then at the center line, you can see this center line, and you know this is our cap height. So we need to increase the cap height as well. To increase the cap height by 0.25, and then we connect these points together. So I'm just going to use my free hand to do that. So just like this. So this 1/2 inch that we measured here, we are going to do the same thing at the waistline, and that will be our ease allowance for the sleeve. Then we connect the points together. So this is what you will have for the sleeve. So the next thing we just want to do now is to add our seam allowance of 1/2 inch round the sleeve. So this is how the sleeve pattern will look like. So I'm just going to cut this out now. So now that we've cut out all the pattern for the jacket, I will just show you how to trace the facing for the front. So for the front pattern, to cut the facing for the front, all you need to do is just to place your ruler on this, this nipple to nipple line. You place your ruler on this line straight to the middle point of your shoulder slope. So you find the middle point of your shoulder slope, which will be around here. Then you just place your ruler like this, and then we are going to trace it. So from here, from this line, so from this line down to the M line is going to be the facing. So all this part is going to be the facing for the front, and the other part will be the lining. So you can as well cut facing for the back. So all you just need to do is just to mark like 2. You find the middle point of your shoulder, which will be around here, and then you just draw a line that is parallel to the neckline. You just draw it towards the center back. So that is how to cut the facing. So we've come to the end of this tutorial, and our next tutorial will be on how to cut and sew a jacket with this pattern. So don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you get notified once I upload a new video. Thank you for watching this video. Then I will see you again in my next video. Bye.